can search.
Yeah.
Or just 4.08 level 4. Just click here. Click here. Then enter.
She doesn't need
Because he can have to her account to log in this website.
Yeah.
That first. It's here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. She already tested that.
She tested.
So first, yeah, you add in. You account log in. Then just click here and browser.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Run the meeting without.
Oh, this is my name. Okay. So I can just join the meeting because I have already prepared that. Can you call from the no, not caller, but call in the platform.
Can you send a link? Can you send
A link to the platform, like an invitation. We just have email. No, but just again from inside the platform.
Online now.
She's online now. Aurelia?
It's okay. Yes.
Aurelia, are you inside? Aurelia? No. Why you see that she's... Okay. Aurelia, can you hear us?
Yeah, hello, do you hear me?
Aurelia,
Yes, hello, do you hear me?
Perfect. I'm Giusy.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry
Hello.
for...
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. For those who are here in presence, for those who joined us from home remotely, let me thank you also the organizing committee to having given us the possibility to organize this session. And thank you very much also to all our speakers who made them available to report and to present also on this topic. The session has been organized jointly by Istat, UNDP, INEGI, UNODC, and Statistical Moldavia. Topic of the session is measuring progress and reporting challenges on the SDG 16. With the main aim to present you different approaches on the topic, on the measurement of SDG 16, between the international and the national level. And you will see the international approaches from UNDP, from UNODC, and some national experiences more in concrete. Before starting and going into the presentation, let me introduce you the speaker of our session. We will start. My name is Francesco Guzzetti. I'm a researcher from the National Institute of Statistics in Italy. Speaker of our session will be Mariana Neves from UNDP, Oslo Governance Center. Adrian Franco, Vice President of the INEGI Center in Mexico. Salome Flores from UNODC. Aurelia Spataro, Deputy Vice Director of the National Statistical Office in Moldavia. Pina Muratore, Research Director in Istat. So I will give now the floor to Mariana Neves. She will present us the international approach to measure and to monitor the SDG 16. Please, Mariana.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation and to the possibility of organizing this together with institution we have hold very dear and we're collaborating and learning for a very long time. So as I said, focus is on SDG 16. We have very different roles, but it is it's a common agenda, common interest, a common learning, and common exchange between all of us. It's only what, and I've put it behind below. It's only one community, all of us, and it's really, really important that we progress and go through the several steps together. I'm just checking the time so I know I'm respecting it. So the SDG 16, all of us, for the methodological part, we have the custodians. The custodians are more, as the name says, we're just guardians. That does not mean we own the indicator, we are just guardians of the indicators. And for SDG 16, the three agencies, UNODC, OSHR, and UNDP, they track the indicators at global level, and they track a lot of indicators. From the survey-based indicator, we have 9 plus 4. From the main indicators that colleagues here cannot see very well, we have 7 indicators. So we worked, we are conducting the work, but it's a work that we do in a very, very close collaboration with several actors. But this is more or less the framework that we have. Today, we have around 40%, 39.8% of countries with at least one SDG indicators. This is as computed by UNSD. It is not a lot, but it's a great advance to our previous situation in 2015, where we had we have the indicators, but we hardly had metadata. We had several indicators with tier 3. We don't have that anymore. That is really a great advance. Between the survey-based indicator and the admin-based indicators, the survey-based are the ones who have a lower coverage. We have a higher coverage on the admin side, but also because some of the indicators, they existed long before in the framework. So they were not born in the framework. For the survey base, we have indicators like 1633, the UNODC, OSHR, UNDC, OECD, and UNDP are custodian, which is a very new, actually the indicator got in the framework in 2020. So this meant that for us, we had to cooperate. The three agencies decided to cooperate and tackle the survey-based indicators, because that's where our weaknesses, all of us, was. And as I said, on the cooperation and collaboration, that meant that we had to learn from those who are already done and those who already worked on it for decades or for years before, including we have Italy on the list. It was one of the, when we started designing, we went through a very extensive desk review, learning from national experience, learning from regional experience, learning as well from some global experiences. And we went through a second stage so it's a design in cooperation or cooperation to find the best way to collect the indicators. So we had several NSOs going through the initial phase of the instruments, criticizing, sometimes say it's very good, sometimes say it's very bad, take it out. That does not work. We went through a very cognitive testing, very intensive cognitive testing in 3 countries. This was meant to learn because some topics are a little bit more sensitive, some issues needed to have a better understanding of it. And in this phase, we had Cabo Verde, El Salvador, and Kenya. One very important learning experience that we had here, still on cognitive testing, was this was done in the very first phases of COVID. That meant that we had to very rapidly adjust the protocol of the survey to a context that we could not do and no longer do anything on paper. The interviews, the cognitive testing require face-to-face interviews. We could not do face-to-face interview. One of the countries went through 2 lockdowns during the cognitive testing. So we had to find solutions. And the solution that we found, it ended up here, one of the 3 found a solution first and we replicated in the other two countries. We had one, the particular El Salvador, they decided there was no conditions of doing physical face-to-face, no conditions at all. So they did through Zoom, the interviews. They went full virtual because in that context, it was only possibility that they had with a total lockdown. On the piloting, we also had we were still in the very difficult phase of COVID. We went through the 8 countries with a very different context. We have here a very diverse group. We have a conflict-affected country, we have a small island developed state, we have a very smaller population, larger population, which is a very diverse, and they also represented very different challenges. From one of the models, for instance, the sexual violence model in Tunisia is not the same, is not going to have the same behavior that is going to have in Kenya. Particularly the questions that are addressed to men. So this was something that it was a very important learning experience. And then we finalized it and we got all the information. We went through the Statistical Commission. It was welcomed by the Statistical Commission. By the way, I forgot to say that another very important reviewer and contributor to this, it was Mexico, which is also going to speak today in more detail. So for this, it was created the 6 models of the SDG 16 survey. We have access to justice, corruption, which is only a model on bribery, discrimination, governance, violence that has physical, sexual, psychological violence, and safety, sexual and non-sexual harassment, violence reporting, and one model on human trafficking. Those that are underlined are those that are they required a bigger effort in their design. Safety is underlined by mistake, by the way. So it was developed with these 6 models and in response to several concerns and requests that came. For the implementing phase, we had very different solutions and we had to also learn from the solutions. One of the big lessons that we had first, as a custodian, our primary actor is always the National Statistical Office. Always. We only work with other actors when it's really not possible to work with the National Statistical Office. In some cases, it's not even, we had, for instance, one of the countries, it was not possible to work directly as the primary implementer, but they were involved in the entire process. So when we were designing the questionnaire with the sampling, they were always involved. They were not involved only on the data collection itself. When we went after the data collection, the NSO was also involved. Because as SDGs, for us, the primary actor is always the NSO. We had another solution, have to go through another solution with Somalia, for instance, that it was the Ministry of Justice. Because in some countries they were implementing, and that's also the case of Thailand at this point, there is another ministry, because of the thematic, that ends up taking the lead for the implementation. But again, always involving the NSO. We found it also it was very, very important to have the several teams in the national level. Besides the implementing agencies, we had several teams with the NSO at the center, but with several actors around. For the Tunisia, for instance, they had extensive consultation with all actors, the civil society organizations, other data producers, because we're talking about sometimes sensitive topics. The NSO, we are, not we, I'm not longer NSO. The NSO is a very, very, very extremely important institution, but sometimes for the thematic, it's important to have other actors. When coming here today, I was speaking briefly with Francesco, and we were discussing it's very important, all data producers, sometimes particularly the administrative record data producers, to also be involved because their data is extremely important. We are responsible for the survey, but to actually understand the phenomenon, we also needed other data producers, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the prisons, for instance. So this consultation, involving them in the data collection process as early as possible, it's been a factor of success so far, and that we believe needs to be replicated, and we have used this for most. Another coordination, we also, as a UN, we also say and advocated that we need coordination to the national counterpart, but also there's a need of coordination in our side, the UN agencies. So for us to share more our methodology, when possible, align methodology, learn from what we do well, but also what we don't do well, because sometimes we also make mistakes. It's very rare, I assure you, but we do. So it's the basic information or basic lesson that we have was that we need everyone first to conceptualize. Our standards are very good, are very clear to us, but when we put this very beautiful standard at the country level, they're not always behave the same way we designed them. We needed the national teams involved to help us understand how it is these phenomena are in the country and how we can adapt not for the global reporting only, but and most important, to be used by the national actors for their own interests, for their own priorities. That means also that we need as much as possible. You see, we have Italy who has extensive experience, and there's a lot of, Canada has a lot of extensive experience, but all the experience that we have, all the documentation we have, we always need also to continue to work on the further methodological development. So we have the survey, is it enough? No, it's not enough. And we have other I'm fighting with the bottom here because I click in one side, it does not pass, I have to click twice, so it's frustrating me, but I'm here. So for the implementation of the survey, now for the countries that might be interested, there's three solutions, three important solutions that I want to share. One is the full implementation of the survey. That means for some countries, they don't have they have a little bit of data or no data at all. For these countries, we advise to do a full implementation, which means all models, all sections. That gives you information of everything at once. That allows you to cross-tabulate, to cross-analyze between the several models, because although the models are separate, it's one reality, and it is important to do so. Another one is a merger. Some countries already have very, some information, some, I can give you an example. For Africa, there's governance, peace, and security, which already measures some indicators. They are not aligned with SDG indicators. And also the indicators, they evolve, they change. So here we need to upgrade. And the other one is not all countries have the financial resources to do a full implementation at once. It's not possible. So sometimes we have to prioritize one model. You do only the bribery, or only the violence part. Being that if the country can do a full implementation, a victimization survey, that's better. So the violence model is when we cannot do a full victimization survey, or you do bribery for the SDG 16 survey when we cannot do a full corruption survey. Being that those are the main solutions. So this is in very short, and because I also want to hear my other colleagues presenting, this is the SDG 16 survey, and I'll be very happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mariana, for the interesting presentation, giving us a highlight on the whole process, highlighting both difficulties, challenges, but also the progress achieved. So thank you very much. I'm going to give now the floor to Adrian. So Adrian, please, the floor is yours. Present us how the SDGs been, I mean, the system to measure SDG 16 has been implemented in Mexico. So please, Adrian, and thank you.
Francesco, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good night from Mexico City. Thanks. First of all, thanks you for the invitation to this panel, to the organizers, of course, to my very close friends, Francesco, Giuseppina, Salome, Mariana, and of course to my colleague Aurelia, for the opportunity to share with you, so in a very few minutes, the experience of Mexico dealing with the SDG 16. I would like to share a presentation here. Just let me try to share a presentation in order to guide the discussion. Well, I hope you can see it, the presentation.
Yes.
Let me yes, in this point. Okay. Well, let me first. I have to say that when we receive the final version of the indicators to the SDGs indicators, we have already a very good space in Mexico. In the national statistical system, we have one very fundamental part of the national statistical system is related specifically to statistics focus on governance, public security or crime, and justice. And this is very important because from the National Statistical Office in Mexico, INEGI, we coordinate and we regulate this national statistical system for this topic. So, as you can see, we since 2008, we already have the institutional space in order to develop indicators and to produce data. And with this system, of course, we have to produce, integrate, manage, preserve, disseminate, publish all the data related to these topics. So how we manage this process? First of all, let me tell you that this is a very coordinated process between producers and also users of statistical data. Each of these circles are referring to the special technical committee in which we put all the national and state level and even municipal level institutions related to several topics. For example, governance data, justice prosecution, justice administration, human rights, corruption, prison and prison system, and public safety or security committees. In these committees, there are experts, both from government agencies, from academicians, of course, statisticians, because INEGI coordinate this process. And the total governance of this national system, it is very important to say that it is not just from national perspective. Of course, we work a lot with UNODC, with OECD, with the human rights in the United Nations, the Office for the High Commissioner, with OIS, with UNDP, with ECLAC in the CEPAL, and many other institutions out of from a statistical system, also in Mexico, with civil society, academicians, some associations of related to public security or crime, some others to prosecution, to justice, and etc. So this is all our data ecosystem in which we are focused on, oriented to produce all the data related to these topics, and the topics related to and the topics on SDG 16 specifically talking. So the story, as I told you, it began in 2008. So don't worry about the acronyms that you see here. It refers to the years, and each blue point here is every year we produce, in this case, national surveys. During the last 12 years, we have produced 17 different national surveys related to victimization, national victimization survey on people and households, victimization surveys related to businesses, quarterly national surveys related to urban security and crime, and one specific and very specialized survey related to corruption in people and households, and also one specialized survey related to corruption in business, some other related to transparency, to access of data, to access to justice, to civil justice, to related to the prison system, related to the justice system itself for young people, another for police people, from prevention of crime, another related specifically to violence against women. So we have a collection of 17 national different surveys annually or biennial. And also we have 18 national census of government that we collect every year. Every year we go to all the institutions related to prosecution, to justice, to public administration, to prison system, and human rights, institutions for transparency, and so many other institutions, in order to collect data directly from them from administrative records. So in this story, we have already 18 different national census on government in order to have data from the institutions. And for example, this year we are going to publish 15 national census of government related to federal justice, to prison system, to federal prison system, to public administration in federal or national, and also state level. From municipal level, also we are going to collect the data. We have more than 2,500 municipalities, so we collect every 2 years data from them, but also data from justice prosecution and public safety or public security, some other data from transparency and access to public information, human rights, even from legislative power, legislative branch of government, and so many others. And about surveys, in this year, we are going to publish and collect data for 9 different programs. For example, one quarterly urban public safety survey, one national survey on young people related to criminal justice system, one survey related specifically to discrimination, cyberbullying or cybercrime, of course, our national victimization survey, our national survey related to quality and government, and specifically related to corruption, some other related to consumption of psychotropic and drugs consumption, trust in institutions, and of course, we are planning a very important survey related to children and adolescents or young people, and specifically related to violence on this kind of population. And as you remember, we have these kind of technical committees, very specialized on the definition, on methodologies, technical and conceptual issues, where in order to produce data. But also we have at national level, and also INEGI, our National Statistical Office, is the technical secretary of a very specialized technical committee related to SDGs. So we produce all the data as we see in surveys and census, and also from other administrative records that we collect. And we put all the data in related to SDGs, specifically in this specialized technical committee, in order to report to UN agencies and also to integrate the data from so many other institutions in order to report the indicators. As a result of all this work, let me tell you that we have now 21 of SDGs with data every year, with the annual data, and some other with biennial data. But we have from the total SDG 16, we have now 21 with this statistics. And of course, we also are facing some challenges in order to collect data from another eight indicators. And of course, our work is not just national, because also we collaborate a lot with custodians of indicators in order to improve our methodologies, our technical work, and also the conceptual issues. And in this work, of course, the result is in order to improve the data. One final idea that I would like to share with you is that for Mexico, and specifically for INEGI and this national system of governance, crime, and justice statistics, for us, it is not just important to report the data. It means it is not, we don't work just to report data for an indicator. We work in order to produce data for public policies. This is a list, very simple and very short list of several programs in which we put indicators. Of course, some of them very, very correlated to SDGs indicators, but there are so many others. And we fulfill all the requirements of data in order to design these public policies at national level and sector level, and also institutional programs related to specific public policies, and also at the state level. So what we do is not just to fulfill the data for indicators in SDGs, but also to give to the people and institutions responsible for several problems and public policies, where we work with them. And of course, this is very important for us to also give data in order to change the situation of some phenomena. This is all for me in this very, very quick summary of our work. And of course, I am open to comments and questions. Thank you very much for everyone for listening to me, and thank you very much for my colleagues for the invitation.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Adrian, for having shared with us all the work you have done and you are still doing. So I think it's a really impressive system and subsystem. So thank you very much. I'll give you now the floor to Ms. Salome Flores. She will present and share with us a framework to measure corruption. And please, Salome, the floor is yours. And thank you again.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's good to participate in a new edition of the World Data Forum, and just to say hello to all my fellow colleagues that are also sharing their experiences today. So I'm gonna share with you a recent development about measuring SDG 16, specifically a recent development in measuring corruption. As you know, corruption is one of the, like all the other topics in the SDG 16 really, but it's one of the challenging issues. And there are many countries that are interested in measuring corruption, but for a long time, we've been discussing about how to address corruption, how to measure corruption. So there are efforts at the international level to help countries to measure this phenomena. First of all, I think it's good to remember that there is a global commitment for countries to measure corruption. As you know, there is a UN convention against corruption, and in that convention, there is actually an article related to the importance of collecting, exchanging, and analyzing information on corruption. And it's very good to have it, but the challenge, as you know, is how to define corruption, what methodologies can countries use to measure corruption, and I guess the very first question is, how do we define what corruption is? So just to link this topic with the seminar, as you know, within SDG 16, there are two indicators to measure a very specific aspect of corruption, that is bribery. So the international community agreed to measure bribery in population using household surveys, and also to measure bribery in businesses, again, applying surveys in businesses. So these are indicators 16.5.1 and 16.5.2. UNODC, together with UNDP and a group of experts from different international organizations like the World Bank, OECD, Transparency International, and of course, some of our colleagues from national statistical offices like Adrian from INEGI, Jussi from Istat, and other colleagues from statistical offices of Indonesia as well, help us to put together this manual on corruption survey. So now every country has a clear methodology on how to go about measuring this specific aspect of corruption. But corruption is a lot more complex than just measuring the prevalence of bribery. We all know that every year Transparency International publishes their index regarding the perception of corruption. And that's also very good because it raised awareness about the topic. But we had a discussion about how to go beyond the measurement of perception and beyond the measurement of the prevalence of just one corruption-related behavior, that it's bribery. So we, as UNODC, we're leading discussions to follow up not only the Convention Against Corruption, but also other resolutions like the one on measuring corruption by the Conference of State Parties of the Convention, and also another resolution based on the political declaration of the special session of the General Assembly against corruption, to move forward and really to try to develop a framework that could guide countries to measure corruption beyond the SDG indicators. So I'm happy to share with you that during the last session of the UN Statistical Commission, the Commission endorsed a statistical framework that was developed after extensive consultations worldwide, really, with the participation of many countries, as you can see, and different types of institutions. So after, you can see, different consultations, we were able to put together a framework, and you can actually take a look at the framework accessing this QR code, and you will see how this framework was constructed, but also you will see its structure. And the idea of this framework is really to have different types of indicators, because as you know, there is no one single indicator that can help us to measure the complexity of what corruption is. So we have a number of measures. We have direct measures, but we also have indirect measures. So direct measures are supposed to help us to capture the magnitude and the direct experience of corruption. this direct experience of corruption by the population in general, but also by businesses, of course. Under the indirect measures, we also have an element of perception, because of course more and more we have countries measuring the perception of corruption, so countries thought that it was important to include it. But we also have other indicators related to the risk. What are the opportunities for corruption to happen, but also what are the constraints that countries are implementing to tackle corruption? And finally, we have other set of indicators that capture the response by states, by governments, to again address corruption. So what are the legislative measures? And this is not, let's say, a quantitative indicator, but it's important also to monitor efforts by countries to tackle corruption. And finally, we have another set of indicators related to the de facto actions that countries are implementing. Specifically, what are the measures that they have, for example, within the criminal justice to tackle corruption? So this is basically how the framework was built. And we have three different elements that are important to this framework. First of all, we have different types of behaviors or different types of areas that are considered as corruption, and this is based on the UN Convention Against Corruption. So we go beyond bribery. We also have illicit enrichment, we have embezzlement, we have other types of corruption that we don't measure because they're very difficult to measure, but for the first time we are attempting to present and propose a series of indicators to measure other types of corruption beyond bribery. There is another dimension that has to do with preventive measures, and this is really about what countries have implemented, what policies have they implemented to prevent different aspects of corruption, for example, in procurement, for example, in relation to access to information. And finally, there is the third dimension that has to do with the environment to report and address corruption. So this is really to have data about those efforts that countries have conducted to ensure that there is an environment for citizens and for civil society, organized civil society, to report corruption and in a way to make sure that is visible and that is addressed. So this is in a very brief explanation what the framework is about. And now UNODC is working to disseminate the framework, and actually that's why we are very grateful to you for including this participation in this session, so we can disseminate more with more audiences about this framework. And we are aiming to pilot the framework with some volunteer countries between June and November in this year. And finally, the framework will be presented in a conference on corruption measurement that will take place in Vienna, and that it's organized by UNODC and the International Academy of Anti-Corruption. And finally, we're aiming to present this framework in the next session of the UN conventions, on the Conference of State Parties of the UN Convention Against Corruption, which will take place in December in this year. So really just to say that the framework is out there, and that I will be happy, and my colleagues at UNODC will be happy to share with you this framework. And if anyone is interested in using it, we will be happy to advise on how to start collecting more data about corruption measurement. And something that I would like just to say at the very end is that this framework is very comprehensive, or as comprehensive as possible, based on the discussions and the suggestions by countries, but it's really up to countries to decide which indicators are more relevant for them and which indicators are key to really monitor and measure their efforts to prevent and tackle corruption. So with this, I end my presentation, and thank you very much for this invitation. Over to you.
So, thank you very much, Salome, for having provided us with the framework, with an insight. I think it's very important to see how the process was, not just to understand the framework at the end, but really the process to reach the framework. So thank you very much. It was really interesting. So I give now the floor to Aurelia. She will present us and share with us the process Moldova is doing in order to approach the measurement and to establish SDG 16, of course, and to establish a dedicated statistical system to monitor the goal and the indicators. So Aurelia, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you very much for the invitation to this meeting. I suppose you are hearing me, right? And
yes, very well.
I will try to. Okay, just a moment. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Is coming. Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Aurelia Spatarla, and I'm the Deputy Director of the National Bureau of Statistics of the Republic of Moldova. And at the request of the organizers, we would like to share your experience regarding the measurement of SDG 16, but putting accent on the crime and justice statistics, because it is the basis, in fact, for the monitoring of the majority of targets in this objective. So on our pathway from MDGs to SDGs, we have passed through the nationalization process of SDG indicators in 2017, and we had two revisions of these indicators in 19 and in 2021. So in the result, we have got at the national level a set of 322 nationalized indicators, out of which 46 indicators are the global ones, and 36% are divided or adjusted to the global indicators. So it will provide us the possibility to ensure the international comparability. On the other hand, the availability of these indicators is about 35 being available with full disaggregation, 30% of these indicators being partially available. It means either all data are collected, were collected, or some disaggregations are lacking, and 18% of indicators are missing and are still to be collected and produced and disseminated. So unfortunately, Moldova has had a too long pathway until the approval of these indicators, formal approval of these indicators. It happened last year, and the list of nationalized indicators has been approved through a government decision. And also last year, national strategy up to 2030 has been approved finally by the law after a few attempts of a few governments to revise and to approve such kind of strategies where these SDG indicators would be mainstreamed. So as it regards the distribution of the tasks for data production and dissemination of SDG indicators in Moldova, for the SDGs, National Bureau of Statistics is responsible for about 40% of the indicators, and the rest ones are coming from other 40 institutions being determined as data sources for the rest of the indicators. And the revisions of SDG indicators, in fact, were guided by the adjustments being done in the global metadata, but also the need to update the time series and to collect as much as possible disaggregations in order to prepare the voluntary national review. So as it regards to the SDG 16, we have nationalized 32 indicators for monitoring the SDG 16 targets. And out of these 32 indicators, 11 are available. 3 indicators are partially available. So it means we have 44% of indicators available fully or partially, and the other 18 indicators are still missing, and we need actions, and we have identified actions on how to produce them as soon as possible, involving the respective stakeholders. And of course, all these indicators are including either official statistics or the data from administrative data sources, but also from the civil society organizations like Transparency International on bribery, or Ombudsman on justice bodies.
Aurelia, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear.
Okay.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, yes. Please go on.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Should I continue?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, please.
So we have
Aurelia,
undertaken an
you still
assessment
have
of.
about 5 minutes, just to remind.
Okay. We have undertaken the assessment of the crime and justice statistics, and we needed it in order to identify all the needs to be addressed. So the insufficient level of data disaggregation, or the insufficiency of methodological explanations, or unpredictable dissemination policies have been identified as issues. Also, it is difficult to call it the available statistics, to call it as a system of crime and justice statistics, because it is still very difficult for us to coordinate all the administrative data sources producing data in this field. And also the new status of Moldova as a candidate country, EU candidate country, being obtained in June 2022, it gives us, together with the commitment towards the 2030 agenda implementation, additional responsibility and need to progress in this matter. So the assessment has been conducted with the support of UNDP Moldova and financial support of Sweden, but also it involves 16 stakeholders, and you have listed them on the screen. So we have worked and are working with all of them and assessed all of them through the perspective of fundamental criteria for official statistics in order to determine the quality of them. And we collaborated in this respect with the Istat and with UNODC. So respectively, through this assessment and through the development of a roadmap, which has been followed by the assessment on the basis of recommendations being identified, relevant stakeholders, in fact, would be able to ensure the data produced to be of a better quality, of a better coherence at the national level, and also better international comparability. Also, this assessment gives us sufficient evidences for certifying some of these national institutions as other producers of official statistics, and it will help us to have more partners as it regards the implementation of the national statistical system, and it will be a good opportunity to strengthen the crime and justice system in Moldova. So the report has produced 23 recommendations, and all of them are directly linked to the need of alignment with specific international standards, like, for example, international classification nationally adjusted. So respectively, we need this, and for that we need the collaboration with UNODC. Also, we need a better response to the user needs, and we need better metadata, in particular for administrative statistics, to be shared with the data users and to involve these data users in the data needs assessment as a phase of the statistical process. And of course, we need to inspire from the good practices at international level. And what would be the next the next steps for us would be to formally establish this technical working group on crime and justice statistics in order to implement the actions from the roadmap. And also this report, as well as the roadmap, will serve as a useful reference at international level for our international partners to cooperate with us. And these already actions from this roadmap and the actions necessary to improve the justice and crime statistics, and in particular to produce data for SDG 16 are already gradually introduced into the different national policies. Like, for example, the last example would be the national program on ensuring gender equality, or the national program on preventing the violence. We have there already plans, concrete plans, for example, on conducting the violence against women survey in 2025. So all these actions being undertaken with the assessment, and also with the setting up of this technical working group, will help us as the national coordinator of official statistics to better coordinate all these 16 institutions, and to help them also to produce a better statistics for SDGs 16. Thank you very much. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aurelia. Thank you again for having shared with us really once again the process, and for having shared with us also the recommendations you got, and I would say the emphasis on the harmonization, on the need to focus on the user needs. It was really interesting. Thank you again. So I'm going to give now the floor to Maria Giuseppina Muratora from Istat. She will explain us and share with us the Italian experience on the measurement of SDG 16. So please.
Thank you very much. What about our experience is it started from the beginning. There was a group, a national group that is in charge of SDGs, and trying to understand what we have at the beginning, and try to look at indicators if there is something that is really the same indicator, or a proxy, or partial. And the idea was also that it was important to add to some indicators in general, for all indicators, some specific indicators that were country specific, in order to understand better what there is behind that specific indicators. And another important situation was that some definitions were not clear in the metadata, and that was the need to create really better synergies, and the need for transparency, coverage, timeliness, and so on. At the same time, in Italy, in 2010, we started to work on the well-being as a report of the FTC Commission, that was something similar, but at the same time different from SDGs. But we, in Istat, we worked a lot in order to maintain in some way an agreement, and how to say, the idea that, okay, some dimensions are overlapping. For instance, in the well-being report, there is the dimension of safety. But at the same time, there is the goal 16, the SDGs. So there was a need to give information that were not different, that doesn't go in different way. So a coherence, and it was important to save. What to say, that since the beginning, the SDGs goals represent a really challenge for us. And the idea that there was the need to have, to create new statistics. But at the same time, there was the idea, oh, what do we have? So it was like an accomplishing an homework. What we had, what is similar, and now it's different. And I want to say also why. And the idea, but there was also challenging the idea that we needed to explore for new data sources or new methodologies. But this is what we have in mind only later and during the process of implementation. Okay, focusing on goal 16, and we have here the UNODC that is a custodian, but also other agencies are custodian of sub-indicators as those on children, that is UNICEF, and so on. So the goals 16 is true that is focused on crime, justice, statistics, but there are also other indicators in goal 11 or 5 that are on violence against women, empowering and discrimination regarding gender equality that are on the border with goal 16. So, and some indicators are really statistical, measurable, and others not. They are about human rights. So I don't speak about these now. And some that are not defined, so it is also difficult to work on this. Now in Istat we have 18 statistical measures for goal 16 that are referring to 9 indicators of the goal. And okay, it's not readable for you, but there is a report that is annually updated and a platform in which indicators are updated every 6 months, and a report that is in Italian and English too. And what about the indicators? Indicators that are completely measured. Partial, measured. It means that they are measured, but they are not measured in the same way as requested by metadata, and not yet measured. And there is the use of registers-based statistics, population survey, and a mix of them as we are trying to do it. Obviously, the importance was on metadata to identify the better sources. But at the same time, this is the new process, to look at what really there is. And I think that in these years also, the UN changed a lot, improved a lot the definition. And also, as we see from Mariana and Salome, there is the creation of new tools. And it is also much more clear for us as a countries to look, oh, okay, these indicators means this and this. Or sometimes we can see that there are still a lot of work to do on different indicators. Oh my God, sorry, okay. What about some indicators? So I just present you some of them, considering the completely done. Oh, sorry. Okay. And for instance, on homicide, there is a lot of work that we did. And we define as the International Crime Classification rules that asked us that we have implemented. And there is also the trying to adopt the femicide statistical framework. That is another one that is presented last year at the UN Statistical Commission. And, okay, there was some action, but I was not able to use now. The proportion of population that feels safe walking or uncensored densities, and also the bribery on population, and the indicators of trust in institutions. Just to look very quickly at some data, it was the indicators on the on homicide, and it is also a tentative to measure femicide thanks to the relationship between victims and perpetrator. That is a step forward to measure, and there are also other kind of variables to look at what is the statistical framework on measuring femicide. What about the indicators that are not identical? There are the physical violence indicators that we have improved now in adding new questions in our victimization service. So we did this victimization service since 1997, these are periodical ones, but we were able now to add some questions. And this is what to say, at the beginning, we delivered for SDGs what we had. Now we are thinking, okay, but what we can do of new? We can add the questions to the victimization service, try to define better what is harassment, and also for 11.7 indicators, or improve or really work on different kind of questions and sectors. And doing it also using the experience that Mariana presented on piloting, but also considering what is at international level for instance, for measuring cybercrime, and to understand what is the best situation. While other indicators are measured in other services like multipurpose service, like discrimination, or data about the dispute. And also they will be available for next year in other service. While the situation that was very critical is the indicators on children aggression and trafficking in human beings. I think that is a problem of data, also in metadata. For the first one, why human trafficking is difficult, because you can give us two methodologies, administrative data, and at the same time sample service. But the problem is that they focus on foreign trafficking human beings, and not only on the domestic one, that is now a new challenge. And there are indicators for which I think that Istat need to invest to have these kind of indicators, or to create a new synergies with the Ministry of Interior. At the end, we have now a new engagement for indicators, so it is beyond the task that was at the beginning. It's something that is much more for us. We are creating a lot of new synergies with other institutions, but there is a work in progress, and also this is for at the UN, for UN agencies. And the important thing is that when we start to measure something, but there is an evolution on the topic, we need again to change our methodologies to better define and better measures. The effort to have a balance between the time series of data and the new needs to measure the phenomenon. And at the last problem is that how to choose between local and international comparison, because SDGs represent really a very challenge and very good effort, first of all, at the national level, because they create a lot of awareness, but at the same time, when you look in different countries, what we can compare really. So this is really an open issue. Thank you.
So, Giuse, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone, to our speakers. I would like now to ask to the public, are there questions, points you would like to be explored more? Any suggestion, maybe? Please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Malabe Okuda from Cameroon, NSO. I'm very delighted to attend this session because I worked since a lot with Mariana and other colleagues on this issue of SDG 16. I have two comments, not really a question. The first one is a comment based on the last presentation of Istat. I want just to mention that as Italy has some difficulties to measure the indicator 16.4.2, I would like to share maybe with you the experience of Cameroon and Central Africa covered by UNODC on this issue of small arms trafficking. So there's a program in the sub-region to handle this issue of circulation of small arms and that weapons. So we started collecting data from this in this region, and we had two workshops, and a methodology has been developed in the sub-region, and we shared first the methodology, we experienced the collection of data, and then we have produced a report for the sub-region on the umbrella of the UNODC. The advantage we had is that as there is a crucial issue in our sub-region, we involve the administration dealing with security in the process. And they help a lot to define the concept, the methodology, and the strategy they use to trace the small arm and all the arms. And that was very important for us and for this methodology to address the issue. And the second comment, only based on this experience, is that we are still playing for statistical literacy and data literacy. It's important in the sense that mainly for this issue of trafficking and circulation of arms, we put together all the administration, generally covered by the confidentiality of strategy when dealing with arms. But what we discover is that maybe we as statisticians, we were afraid of what can be shared. And we discovered that those from police services, they was very engaged to share the information. And they asked us, under the umbrella of NSO and the UN, to help them, because they just need a hand to push for them to share the information. Because for the start, it seems to be very confidential, too difficult, but they came and they said, please send us a message that is important. And we put in place a program of capacity building in their service. Firstly, to have an statistical information system, and to help them to acquire infrastructure, meteorology laptops, computers, and now to collect data and process, because they do have a lot of data. But what they need was to process those data in the sense of using it as official statistics, because mainly their information is for their service, for the strategy and for the security measures. But to take this data, administrative sources, and we combine also with a small survey to help them improve their own service, their own capacity. But as the demand came from the National Statistical Office and from the UN, just as the umbrella, when we mentioned in the letter that, okay, it's from the United Nations who recommend to do that, and this was very important for them. They was not asking for money. They just asked for a support, and our safety support, to know that they are linked and they are responding to an international request. So just an experience I just want to share with you, and thank you. We also work with, we have been involved in the first step of developing a classification with ONDC on crime and drugs. We are involved with Mexico and other countries for this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe later. Okay. 2 more questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much from Dominican Republic. And first, I want to thank the support of UNODC and INEGI Mexico, because last year we make an effort to, through our surveys household, trying to start to measuring the 16 SDGs, specifically the 16.3.1 about the proportion of victims of violence, but also the 16.5.2, the proportion of business that had paid a bribe, and in contact with the public. And I guess it was very interesting, the support that we received from UNODC and Mexico in order to define the modules that was included in the survey. They went to the Dominican Republic to training the people, the interviewers, and that was very important. Now we are analyzing those indicators in order to make the publication. Also, we start with all the sector of security and justice to work like Mexico, that is the experience, and INEGI from all Latin American countries and Caribbean and more, about how to work with all those systems, national statistical system on security and justice, and try to establish round tables of cooperation and working on that. But I want to raise also what Maria from Italy said at the end of her presentation about the conceptualization of indicators. No, we think that we need to discuss more about what the concept, the scope, because maybe in the Dominican Republic we select 244 SDG indicators to measure. But today, we have around 44% of indicators that we don't have any source to measure. So this is a problem, and that is something that maybe because of what is the name of this event, a specific event about collaboration, cooperation between the countries. So we need also to try to continues with this discussion between countries, and to know the experience that you are dealing in your own countries, in order to we to know about those experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next one.
Thank you very much. My name is Lamin Diba from the Gambia. I have a question for Adrian. I've seen during the presentation that a number of censuses are conducted based on specific thematic areas. And we all know censuses are very expensive to conduct. I want to understand what their motivations are to conduct censuses for every thematic area, which are, I think, if I get it right, I think these are just few months apart, unless I don't read the slide well. Why is it not possible to combine these modules into one questionnaire and conduct the census together? Because, for instance, if you want to measure corrupt drugs use, crime, corruption, I believe it should be possible to just develop a comprehensive model for each of them and combine them into one questionnaire, because it's a census and you are targeting the same population, rather than conducting census for each of those thematic areas. Because for me, it's cost intensive. So just want to know the motivation behind that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions, or otherwise I would give the floor to Adrian just to reply to this question, and then to Maria Giuseppina. So please, Adrian.
Yes, of course, Francisco, thank you very much. And thank you very much for all the comments from Cameroon, Dominican Republic, and Gambia. Regarding the question on national censuses and inclusive the issue of surveys, let me tell you that each survey and each census is a very specialized instrument, and we cannot put all them together. It means we cannot mix. If we talk about surveys, I will refer first. We cannot mix corruption and victimization and violence against women and many other things that we can imagine in just one questionnaire. Specifically because the sampling is different from each phenomena, the concepts are different, and methodology for collecting data is different. So we need a very specialized surveys in order to collect correct and right and high quality data. And regarding the censuses, is another story in which we need very specialized instruments, because we go directly to responsible to institutions who are responsible of these policies. For example, we go directly to the prosecutors or to judges and the justice system, and we go to the police bodies and the administrations and at the state level, which we have 32. We have one national government in which we collect also data, and we go to the municipal level in which we have more than 2,500 municipalities. And inside each government, we don't have modules. We have a very specific instrument in order to collect, for example, data from each police in each municipality. We have more than 1,500 police bodies in Mexico, police organization, because each state and each municipality is autonomous by itself. So we have to collect data in there. So that's the main motivation in order to have very specialized and standalone surveys and also censuses. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Adrian. Now I'll give the floor to Jose, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much also for the suggestion, sharing comments from the colleague from Cameroon. And about the question of Dominican Republic, it's not easy. So it's not easy, and about the yes, the conceptualization, I think it is the main things, the importance. Okay, it's true that they are very, because you name both scope and concept, and it is true. Just to give an example, about human trafficking. We decided not to deliver data of SDGs only based on reporting rate and investigation of human trafficking. So this is a decision because there is a so huge undetected part of the phenomenon. It was not correct to give data. So the idea was, okay, what do we have to measure? And we started to look at the possible sources of data to understand what is trafficking human being now in Italy. And with the help of UNODC, we were starting to measure trafficking human being using this multi-estimation method. But it is we have a few lists of that we can be used, and also they are only on foreigners. Now in Europe, and also UNODC, is really pushing on the idea is that human trafficking is not a traffic, includes not only the trafficking, but it's more an exploitation. So our problem is we start again with the definition, and then we don't have sources, and we have to restart, okay, again, which is the scope of measurement, which is the topic, which is the definition, and then looking for other kind of possible measures. And perhaps we are completely out of the right road now. And this is almost regarding many, many kind of indicators, harassment. Now with a lot with the pandemic, the technologies where digital world is much more widespread. So our previous measurement for harassment, that is not included cybercrime, cyber violence. Is it correct? And if we now give different measures that include technologies facilitation, it's correct to compare with the previous one. And I am comparing only for Italy. So I think that if you consider also the global point of view, it's really a mess. But perhaps there are other solutions. Thank you. I don't know if Mariana, I don't know if you want to add something.
No, it's actually just a small correction that when I was presenting the survey, I forgot to mention that Gambia is one of the countries that measured the several models in one survey, and we really thank them for the experience.
So, thank you very much to everyone. I think the session is now closed. I would like to thanks again all the speakers we have presented. I think we reached the aim of the session. That was that of bringing together international experiences, national concrete experiences, approaches, highlighting both difficulties but also challenges and what has been already done. And this is, we all are aware this is a work in progress, but if we all are working together in the same direction, taking into account the peculiarities of the national context, I think it should be a good work to be done. So thank you again to everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.